I think he's ready to play now and play at a high level, and we don't have to go through as many growing pains. Sure, there's going to be some, but we don't have to go through as many because of the exposure that he got. And I think he's earned the respect of his teammates, that they know he's not playing because of the name on the back of his jersey.
Hello and welcome. It is always college football. Today is Thursday, June 26th, and we greatly appreciate those of you that are joining us here on the ESPN College Football YouTube page, or if you're here with us via the podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please do. That means our episodes will be in your inbox every single time we clip out a new one. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up here in the next couple weeks. Today's show is going to be a great conversation with Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of the Texas Longhorns. They have so much momentum going right now with what's been created the last couple of years, back-to-back playoff appearances, back-to-back semifinal appearances. Of course, they came up a little bit short last year to the eventual national champions, but they'll have the chance to get revenge in week one of the regular season. We'll ask Steve Sarkisian about that. We'll ask him about Arch Manning and the progress that he's made throughout the offseason. We'll ask him about his wide receiver room. And while they might not be quite as experienced as the groups he's had the last couple of years, they might actually have a higher ceiling. We'll ask him about the offensive line. We'll ask him about the defense. Then we'll ask him a little bit about the culture and where Texas is today when compared to where they were just a couple of years ago. Like we always say, though, subscribe. Check us out on the ESPN YouTube page. We're even getting some run on ESPN linear channels as well. So if you see us, record it, watch it. They're on the linear channels. We're there every week or so right now as well. So let's dive in. Let's kick things off with the great talk with Steve Sarkisian. Well, welcome in now. He's the head coach of the Texas Longhorns. He's Steve Sarkisian, and what a run they've been on these last couple of years, going to multiple playoffs, having a chance to win the SEC in their first year in the league last year. Coach, so much has changed, but man, the progress has been unbelievable the last couple of years. And now it feels like all the hard work that you guys have put in those first few, it's really starting to pay off with continuity and consistency. So how do you feel like this offseason's gone so far?
No, I appreciate you saying all that, Greg, and thanks for having me on. To your point, one, I do think, man, it's so much early on. I was reminding the staff the other day of what 5 and 7 felt like in year one. Some of those tough losses and things, and then just the incremental growth, and one, the internal growth in the program with what we were doing and trying to change the culture, because I felt like that was one of the key issues that we were having. To the types of players that we were recruiting into the program, which I think has grown exponentially. We went from a top 5 recruiting class 3 years ago to a top 3 recruiting class 2 years ago to signing the number 1 class in the country last year. And the byproduct of a lot of that work has been we've had 23 draft picks the last 2 years, which has been the most in the country. All the while, from a team success standpoint, going back to the college football playoffs, going back to the semifinals 2 years. And so a lot of work done. And the exciting part for me, I'm probably as excited or more excited about this team than any of those other teams. And so, a credit to our staff, to our strength and conditioning staff, to all parties involved. But I also think a key component to that, we're going into year 5 with the same coordinators, same head coach, same offensive coordinator, same defensive coordinator, same special teams coordinator, which I think in this day and age is rare. I think that's the best number in the country going on right now. So to your point, continuity playing a part to the development of the players and the culture that we've instilled with the quality of players that we're bringing in as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I've had naturally from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I have a lot of Longhorn friends, as you can imagine. So a lot of people always ask me, when was the moment you knew that things were going to work out well for Coach Sarkisian and Texas football? And I point back to when you guys played Baylor that first year and you guys had a lead and Baylor was good. And you guys ended up not pulling that game off. And Bo Davis went into the bus and said, "Hey, we're not okay with winning. We're not okay with losing. We don't smile. We want to feel that pain. We want to feel that change." And felt like from that point forward, it was an accountability that was immediately instilled from the top, from you, and it's been different ever since. So if you could point to a seminal moment in the last handful of years that you noticed it's starting to change and it's starting to feel the way I want it to feel after wins and after losses, when was that moment for you?
Yeah. First of all, that was a really abbreviated, censored version of Bo Davis's brand bus, by the way, right there, Greg. But that
Well,
was
we
a
want to keep it PG. It's a family
heck of a
show,
moment. Yeah,
family
yeah.
show. We just want to make sure that it's.
I do think that was a big moment. I really think, in year two, when we played Bama here,
Yeah.
and that was a really good Bama team that went on to play for a national championship. It was Bryce Young, it was Jameer Gibbs. That those guys were a very good football team. We kick a field goal with about a minute and 30 to go in the game, minute and 20, and Bryce leads them down. He has a big scramble, and they kick the field goal to beat us at home. And I think maybe the previous year or so, I think people would have been content with playing Alabama that close. And when I got in the locker room, I could get a sense and a feel from our players that wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
If we want to go do what we're saying we want to go do, we have to go win that game. And we didn't win that game that year. And but I really think the mindset coming out of that game, coming out of a loss, to your point, in year one, that mindset coming out of that loss from the coach's perspective. But I thought the mindset coming out of that loss against Alabama, in year two, it was the mindset of the players. Mm-hmm. That was encouraging to me that, okay, they're thinking different now. We were thinking differently as a coaching staff in year one. They were thinking differently as players in year two.
And that's amazing. And look at what's been done ever since. Just a traumatic shift and just an increase year over year with the quality that we're getting from you guys on a year in, year out basis. I want to fast forward to this year's team. So much excitement, so much anticipation surrounding Arch Manning. Naturally, I've known him since he was a kid. I know his family. You've now seen him grow up and frankly, kind of out of the public eye a little bit. Did have some starts last year. But what have you seen from him from a professional standpoint with how he's approached this role and the expectations that are on his shoulders?
Yeah, I give his mom and dad, his grandpa, and Arch a ton of credit for how they've handled all of it. The recruiting process wasn't this big hoopla thing, and he didn't go to all the different camps and 7-on-7s. They kept it very low key. They went and visited the schools that they wanted to visit. It wasn't like, hey, you need to get on a Zoom call with Peyton and Eli and talk about the offense and things. That they went through a very natural recruiting process. And in the end, he came to Texas because that's where he wanted to go to school, and he dreamt of playing quarterback at the University of Texas. And then when he got here, I give him a lot of credit because all he did was come to work and be a great teammate. If you didn't know the name on the back of his jersey, you'd say, man, what a great teammate this guy is for Quinn, for the other guys on the team, the guys in his class. He worked really hard. I think naturally going into year two, he wanted to play more than he played, but he knew his role on that team. And when his number was called, man, he did really good things for us, and he competed his tail off. And he's forever in the archives at the University of Texas. He was the starting quarterback in our first SEC win, in our first SEC game against Mississippi State. He got put into games at some really critical moments. At A&M, he gets put in, that first touchdown drive where he pulls it and runs for a touchdown. And so, he's been exposed to some things naturally. I don't think that I could have predicted a better way for this to go for him, to where he's grown exponentially, not only on the football field, but as a leader, as a person. I think he's ready to play now and play at a high level. And we don't have to go through as many growing pains. Sure, there's going to be some, but we don't have to go through as many because of the exposure that he got. And I think he's earned the respect of his teammates, that they know he's not playing because of the name on the back of his jersey. He's going to be our starting quarterback because he's earned it, and that he's ready to play. And you can feel it. You can feel it in spring, but you definitely can feel it this summer right now that this is his team, and that he's got the respect of his teammates.
Yeah, and he's obviously coming from Cooper Manning. He's got a Koopa Manning. He obviously has an incredible charismatic sense, and I just can't wait for the world to get to know him a little bit better. But as far as his skill set, what is exactly is it that he's working on right now? We know we can run it. We know we can throw it. We know he's got all the God-given tools. But what
Yeah.
would you say have been the highest priorities for him this offseason and trying to make sure that physically he's ready to answer the call?
Yeah, I think, for us, you saw last year the deep ball accuracy is something that is an asset of his. When he played for us, I mean, the shots he took down the field were really effective. We saw the athleticism, right? We saw the legs, his ability to use his legs to create, touchdown runs and explosive plays in some of the biggest games. For us, this offseason was about really knowing the nuances of this offense and then really starting to drive up that completion percentage, right? So some of those throws that we like to use on the perimeter, some of the RPO game, let's make sure that completion percentage is really high with that to go along with those deep ball throws, to go along with him utilizing his legs. Now, if you're defending us, all right, now you have to defend all of the field, the shots down the field, his ability to use his legs, but you can't neglect still the RPO game and those intermediate throws that we've been so effective at, these first few years here, especially with Quinn. That was a strength of Quinn's. So how do we raise all of his game up to where, man, if you're defending our offense with Arch Manning, you got a lot to defend.
Yeah, there's no denying that. And part of what makes him so unique is his legs and how that can obviously accentuate. And we saw Quinn run from time to time. Let's give our Dragon some love.
Yeah.
There were some times when he took off. I remember the Kansas game a couple of years ago. I think he had like 2 30-yard runs. So that was a part of it. But now I feel like it's an even bigger part of what you have to defend. But you won't have to rely exclusively on quarterback run because of the depth you have at running back. And while last year was interesting, to say the least, early on because of the injury to CJ. But obviously Weisner came on and did an amazing job. So now that you have more adequate depth at that position, how do you feel about kind of the pecking order that you have sizing up at running back?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with what Trey Weisner did last year. And I really felt like the second half of the season, man, that guy put the team on his shoulders in a couple games where we had to run the ball and, he wasn't developed into kind of the running back stature that we wanted yet. And he's had a great offseason. I give Trey Weisner a ton of credit. He went into spring, he was bigger. He was faster. He was more, decisive in his running style, and that's been a huge asset for us. I think a couple other young players that people have almost forgot a little bit about. Jarrett Gibson has had a great spring and a great summer, and he's a guy that had some big plays for us in some critical games. Michigan came on when Blue got hurt and played really good football for us. Christian Clark is back. He was the other guy that got hurt in training camp when Cedric Baxter got hurt. He had hurt his Achilles. He's had a great spring, a great summer. So those three guys I'm super pumped about. Obviously, Cedric Baxter's a wild card. He was starting for us as a true freshman, was poised, I thought, for a big season last year, hurt the knee. And so we've been methodical in our approach with him. He's done everything we've asked of him in his recovery. My thing with that is I don't want to put him out there before he's really ready to play. Right. And he's giving me no reason not to think that he's not going to be ready. But I guess I'm being a little more cautious than most because I can be, knowing that, hey, I've got these three other guys in that room. I've got a wild card in Ryan Niblett. I've got a true freshman in James Simon. We have other players in that room. I want to make sure when CJ Baxter plays for us, he's ready to play. It could be week 1 against Ohio State. And if he's ready, he's going to play. Could it be, week 2, week 3, week 4? Could it be our SEC opener at Florida? I don't know. I know we're a better team when Cedric Baxter's healthy and ready to go. But I don't feel like I'm in a place where, man, I need C4 against Ohio State or we're in trouble. We got a rusher in Trey Weisner, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last season. We've got these other two guys who can play football. So when we get Cedric Baxter back 100% healthy, we're going to be a better team. But again, it's a little bit of a luxury because I don't feel like I'm going to have to force him back to play maybe when he's not quite ready to go. But he'll tell us when he's ready, and when that time comes, it's going to be go time for him as well.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, what great depth you have at that position. It's amazing, and so many guys that can help you. Look at the wide receivers. I feel like your first couple years you had obvious skill sets with the three guys that you went with, where you had one guy for third down, you had the catch and run and Worthy, and then you had the big play, deep ball contested catch guy on the outside with the length. Now it feels like you're starting to morph into really interchangeable pieces. Matthew Golden was awesome. Isaiah Bond did a lot of great things. But now with what you have back with DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo, the infusion of some talented freshmen that we now seen based on last year, freshmen can be as good as anybody in college football on day one. How do you anticipate kind of spreading the ball around with the guys that you now have in your receiver room?
Yeah, I would say the frontline three guys, I'm super pumped about. Like, I kind of like that people aren't talking about a receiver core like they have in the past. It was like Texas's receivers are the greatest ever. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, let's tone it down a little. This year's group is kind of flying under the radar. I think Ryan Wingo is a budding star.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't get the opportunities maybe that a couple of the other freshmen around the country got last year. But when he got his ops, man, he made some big time plays for us in some big games. And he's big, he's physical, he's fast. So what is he going to provide for Arch? I think they've got great rapport. DeAndre Moore was a really good player for us last year and was a really good player for us at critical moments in big games. I mean, he has a huge touchdown in the SEC championship game. So in the slot, what he's able to do, and then the addition of Emmett Mosley from Stanford. Here's a guy who caught 50 balls as a true freshman in 9 games at Stanford last year. So those 3 guys are all relatively young. Wingo and Emmett Mosley are both second-year players. DeAndre is going to be a third-year player. So we like what they bring. I think Parker Livingstone had a great spring practice for us as a guy that can play all 3 spots for us. And then we signed a heck of a receiver class, guys coming out of high school, Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, and Dalen McCutcheon. So I think the combination of all those guys in that room and what they can do, I feel great about that room. I don't feel good about it. I feel great about that room, probably better than most people do on the outside. That's the beauty of being in the building every day with these guys and the rapport they have with Arch. So that's a good room for us. There's playmaking ability. To your point, there's guys that can play multiple positions. They can play outside. They can play in the slot. We're a little bit more physical on the perimeter than we've been. I think we'll block better on the perimeter, which, as you know, in our offense is a huge component to what we do of getting the ball in space and blocking on the perimeter. So that room, I think, is poised for a really good season, probably a little better than maybe the pundits would think of where Texas receiver core is right now.
Well, it's pretty amazing that you might be improved even in spite of all the lost production. It just speaks to the depth and the talent that you guys have been able to acquire. What about offensive line? As we kind of go across the board, there's been a lot of turnover there. There's a lot of new faces. I know you're really pleased with the talent that you have, but there is a bit of a learning curve from an experience standpoint, especially knowing that there is a relatively inexperienced quarterback behind them. So how do you feel like that competition is going up front?
Yeah, no, I think it's gone well. The biggest thing we lost, I mean, you lose a Kelvin Banks, that's a big loss. Let's make no mistake about it. He's a top 10 pick. I think one of the biggest things we lost was the continuity that group had. They had played so much football together, and it started with Jake Majors at center. He started for 4 years for us at center. And so Cole Hudson sliding into the center spot, a guy who's played a lot of football for us the last 3 years, has kind of grown his way into it. It's just him playing center now with Arch and that continuity that they have. DJ Campbell's back at right guard. I think we learned a ton about Trevor Gooseby at the end of the season, his ability to play both tackle spots. When Kelvin was hurt and when Cam Williams got hurt, Trevor Gooseby was blocking Georgia. He was blocking Texas A&M. He was blocking Clemson. He was blocking Arizona State. All right, so 4 pretty good teams with pretty good pass rushers that he had to play against that we learned a lot about. We didn't have to just rely on a spring game to figure out if he could play or not. He played in some really big moments. And then we have some young budding stars that we feel like, man, they're ready, whether it's Nick Brooks, whether it's Brandon Baker, a guy who's been in the program, Nato Mazzullo, another guy who's kind of grown up in the program. So we've got plenty of talent in that room. It's getting these guys to play as one unit. And that's where Coach Flood comes into play. And, Coach Flood and I are going into year 9 together from our time with the Atlanta Falcons, Alabama, and now here. And so we're definitely singing the same tune of where we need to get on the offensive line, but it won't be because of talent. It's just going to be about those guys playing together and having the confidence to do so, and then having to do it in week one. Like we don't get a couple preseason games to get ready to go, right? When you go to the Horseshoe to play Ohio State in week one, we've got to get them ready to play. And no way is there better to get them ready to play than them having to block our front, every day in practice, because our guys are really good. And so, to gain their confidence, they're going to gain their confidence by having to go against the group that they have to go against every day in practice.
Well, it's funny because I was going to transition to defense, but you've brought up Ohio State multiple times, and the fact that that's the carrot that's kind of dangling. I've always said week one opponent, big time opponent, is always super helpful for the amount of urgency you feel in fall camp. At Alabama, that we played a big week one opponent or week two opponent every year, so it was just something that kind of became ingrained in us. And we openly discussed, hey, we got Clemson, like we got Virginia Tech, we got Penn State, whatever it may be. And it was widely talked about. And yeah, you're never supposed to put, one game as a higher level of emphasis or it's more important than any other game. They're all the same. They all count the same. But when you have that week one opponent that can really test you, what does that teach you as a coach? And what does that teach your team about making sure the camp is completely dialed in so you're ready to roll?
Well, I love it. And I learned a lot of that from Coach Saban at Bama. We always had those games, right, that were coming. And, as you get into camp and you're doing your installation and you're going through it and you're doing, half line pass and you're doing all the drills. And it can get monotonous at times. It can. It's hot. Everybody's tired. But man, when I got I can always throw that little jab of what Ohio State's doing. They're in training camp too. They're in team run too, right? They're sore and tired too. And I'm sure Ryan Day's doing the same thing about us. Like that's the beauty of playing these games. And this is 3 straight years for us. We played Alabama in week 2 here. We went to Alabama in week 2 years ago. We went to Michigan last year in week 2, and this year we're going to Ohio State. So this is 3 straight years that it's not going to be new for our veteran players, having played at Alabama, at Michigan, and now at Ohio State. I think we take a lot of pride in preparing for those games. We take a pride in going into those games prepared, ready to play with the right mindset, the right physicality that's needed, and then ultimately the right execution that's going to be needed in a game like that. So we use it to some degree. It's not the end-all, be-all. This is all training camp's about. Like we've got to prepare ourselves for a grind of a 16, 17-game season. But yet, man, it's sure good to have those ones that are right at the front end of the season to kind of kickstart you and get you ready to go.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Well, your defense won't need much kickstarting. I'll be honest with you. It's like it's a star-studded group as you'll find. Now, ultimately, will it be the best defense in the country? I don't know. But on paper, with the names we know and the production that's back, I don't know how anyone can put a defense in front of what y'all bring back from an experience standpoint, from a takeover of the game standpoint. So start at your edge defenders and just how ridiculously deep that group is. How do you anticipate those guys kind of answering the challenge and living up to the expectations that we all have for them?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, we've adjusted a few things schematically and personnel-wise to make sure that we're trying to get our best players on the field, right? And Colin Simmons needs to be a starter for us. Last year he was always he was rotating with Trey Moore. 2 great players, right? And it was like, okay, well, now we have to wait for third down to put them on the field together. So we've adjusted some things there. Those 2 guys are tremendous players. And the addition of Brad Spence from Arkansas, who had, I think, 6 sacks in the SEC last year. So those 3 guys, not only playing edge, but playing linebacker combined, tremendous players. You have Ethan Burke on the other side, who has made some big time plays and big time games, and now it's his time with Barron Sorrell moving on. With some young players behind him, with Zena, Lance Jackson, Colton Vosick, some really good players there. The addition of Justice Terry at strong side end, so we've got some good players there on the edges, and then our ability to use our backers off the edge. Anthony Hill, I think, has 15 career sacks or something, 14 career sacks in 2 years as a Mike linebacker. That's because we're using him, on edges, and that's where Trey Moore can come into play, Brad Spence, and then Steady Eddie Leonga Lafau, and what he's meant for us, and then a budding star, in my opinion, in Ty Anthony Smith at linebacker. So all those guys are kind of interchangeable because they're all going to find ways to not only internally blitz, but edge rush for us to create one-on-one matchups.
It's funny because when I look at you guys, there were those traditional, you had Pete Kwiatkowski's traditional, quarters coverage. Like you kind of knew what it was. But now with the amount of juice, I guess, for lack of a better term, that you brought in, it almost feels like you guys were evolving a little bit to become, I don't want to call you Georgia, you know what I mean? But just guys they stopped the run on the way to the passer. And you just have 7 different guys that could create a pass rush at any one given point. Is that a fair assessment with kind of where you guys are evolving into?
Yeah, I to your point, I think so. And I give PK a lot of credit for evolving that way. And I think we've been allowed to evolve. One, the personnel at the line of scrimmage has been helpful, but also I think the personnel in the back end has been helpful.
Yeah.
We're allowed to do more things coverage-wise. We're allowed to play stickier in coverage, play a little more man coverage, given our guys the freedom to go ahead and go rush, adding an extra element in the box to where we're able to play one gap defense and turning guys loose and letting them go rush and go get after the quarterback, create more turnovers. But I think it's a byproduct of PK evolving and to his credit doing that, but also bringing in talented players, not only at the line of scrimmage, but in the back end, and those two things tying together.
Yeah, it's been impressive to watch. I think PK does as good a job as anybody. And you referenced your coaching continuity earlier. How is it that you're able to keep these guys every year? I mean, it's amazing. I mean, everyone else is always looking for the other opportunity. Oh, I'm going to create a little leverage here. I got a chance to go here. Hey, how is it that you're able to keep those guys as happy as they are in the roles that they're in so that they're not possibly pursuing other opportunities annually?
I'd like to say I'm a great guy to work for, Greg. I don't forget being an assistant coach, man. It's like, half day here, take a week off there and all that. But I think everybody does that stuff, But again, I try to treat these guys well. I appreciate Chris Delconte and the resources that we're able to provide our assistant coaches to get them to stay. You've been around Austin enough. It's a great place to live. A lot of people have to go on vacation. We can kind of staycation here, whether it's Lake Travis, Lake Austin, Barton Springs, downtown. There's so much to do. But in the end of the day, we're all better coaches when we can coach better players. And I think that was something I learned from Coach Saban as well. And so these guys all have an opportunity to coach really good players in a great city. I think their families love it. A lot of their kids go to school here at UT right now. And so at the end of the day, I think we've created a good environment for them too. As much as our culture has helped our players, I think our culture has helped our coaches as well. And, it's always fun to win, Coach Saban says this all the time. Winning's fun. Like that's the fun part about Alabama. Well, now that we're winning some games around here, that part's fun too.
Yeah, winning's fun for 5 minutes, and then it's on to the next challenge. I know it's the same.
Then it's good, bad, and ugly, and you're getting your ass ripped Monday morning.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Winning's great for like those 2 minutes, and then you get yelled at. But that's just the way it goes. But hey, iron sharpens iron, man. Couldn't be happier with the success you've had up to this point. I'm not at all surprised, and can't wait to see your team this year, man. Best of luck this summer and in fall camp.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks.
All right, terrific visit there, but let's dive into our mailbag. Tons of questions have been pouring in the last couple weeks. We continue to encourage all of you guys to submit questions on our ESPN College Football YouTube page. Just submit them in the comment section. We'll take those comments. We have a couple actually in the mailbag today that are from that comment section, or you can submit them into our social media feeds. Always CFB on both Instagram and on Twitter. So, Coobs, where are we going today?
All right, we're going to start off with Dennis in Colorado, and he asks, do you feel that because of NIL, high-profile players are under more pressure to perform? We hear the numbers being tossed out. I mean, Bryce Underwood is making a lot more money than I am, and he's proven nothing in college football.
Well, I think Bryce Underwood was making a lot more money than pretty much everybody. So at least 19-year-olds or 18-year-olds, whatever he is. Let's talk a little bit about the examples of guys that have lived up to the expectations. And there have been plenty. I mean, Caleb Williams, obviously in his time at Oklahoma, lived up to the expectations. There's been a DJ Lagway at Florida living up to the expectations. Lenora Sellers at South Carolina living up to the expectations. Hopefully, the Arch Manning will live up to the expectations. But if you honestly look at since the NIL era, there have been a handful of guys that hasn't really worked out at their first school. We'll start with Spencer Rattler. He was at Oklahoma, had 2020, great year, finished the season incredibly strong, goes into 2021 as the face of college football, and it wasn't good. He ends up struggling and actually ultimately getting replaced by Caleb Williams a little later in the year. Now, he revitalizes his career at South Carolina, but it didn't work out because the expectations and the weight of the expectations were a little bit too heavy. Let's talk about DJ Uiagalelei. DJ Uiagalelei was going into 2021 as maybe one of the faces of the sport as well. Had a great 2-game stretch in 2020 when Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID. He played great against Boston College. He played great against Notre Dame. And then when he became the full-time starter in 21, he wasn't nearly the same guy. Goes to Oregon State, revitalizes his career, finishes at Florida State, and it didn't go so well. Let's look at another one, Bo Nix. Bo Nix arrives at Auburn in 2020 as the savior, the son of a former Auburn Tiger quarterback, 5-star, grew up in his backyard, diehard Auburn fan. Never really worked out at Auburn. He had some good moments, but not elite moments. Goes to Oregon, develops into an incredible player. So there have been a million examples of guys where it didn't work out at all. JT Daniels is a guy at SC where it started out, then he goes to Georgia, has a decent 4 or 5 game stretch at Georgia, gets replaced, and then is watching Georgia win the national championship with a different quarterback, Stetson Bennett, while he's sitting on the sidelines. And he goes to West Virginia and finishes his career at Rice. He's very well traveled. You also look at some guys where it's still probably a little too early to declare exactly what's going to happen. Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma. He was expected to be the guy to replace Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma and take Oklahoma's offense to new heights. I mean, Oklahoma fans, if you talked to them last offseason, they felt like they were in better shape at quarterback with Jackson Arnold than they were with Dylan Gabriel. So it's going to be interesting to see what things work out with him at Auburn, but there's been a handful of guys that have not lived up to the expectations and the weight of the NIL expectations. Because I do think now, in the era of the NIL, the expectations are higher and the pressure is higher as well.
All right, next one comes from Lincoln Cutler via the ESPN YouTube page. And he said, my question is, what are your 5 favorite under-the-radar games this year? Games that might not be getting national coverage, but could either be extremely entertaining or impact the CFB race?
Well, there's a few. I actually went through it. As of this point, when I look at under-the-radar games, it's really, really hard for me to pick under-the-radar games in October and November because we're not even sure what those teams are going to be. But based on preseason expectations and how it could kind of jumpstart a team getting hot in victory and then riding things out the rest of the way. One that came to mind is Illinois at Duke. This on September 6th. A game that's completely flying under the radar. But if you look at what Illinois did, they're coming off an incredible 24 campaign in which they won double-digit games. They bring back their quarterback in Luke Altmaier. And then at Duke, they won 9 games quietly last year in Manny Diaz's first year there in Durham. They bring in Darian Mensah, the new starting quarterback from Tulane. That has a chance to potentially propel Illinois into a position where they could compete for an at-large berth in the college football playoff. And then conversely, will the ACC get 2 teams in again? They have a chance to potentially get 3, who knows? But if Duke beats a possible playoff contender in the Big Ten, that could be significant for their resume as well. We'll also go to Arkansas at Notre Dame. Arkansas last year, when people talk about Notre Dame, they're talking about really 2 games in September. All right, they're talking about the game at Miami, and they're talking about A&M coming to them. But if you look at the game on September 27th, they will have already been challenged greatly by those 2 aforementioned teams. Well, in comes Arkansas. What did Arkansas do last year? They beat Tennessee, who ultimately made the playoff. So that's a game that I think is kind of flying out of the radar right now in September. Auburn at Baylor. This is a game on August 29th. Now, Auburn, everyone knows that Hugh Freeze needs to win this year. Hugh Freeze has even admitted that he needs to win this year. Well, Dave Aranda still needs to win, even though last year he finished on a ridiculous hot streak by winning 6 games in a row to end the regular season. Now they bring their quarterback back, they bring their running back back, and for Auburn, tremendous investment this offseason by bringing in high-profile portal players. We already referenced Jackson Arnold. He's going to be in there as well at their starting quarterback, more than likely. So this is a game that could be significant. One of these 2 teams is going to have after this game, one of these two teams is going to have playoff aspirations. The other is going to have question marks about their coaching staff being there long term. It's unfortunate, but it's week one overreactions that we do every single year. A few others that I picked out, and you asked for 5. I apologize. I couldn't limit it to just 5 because I felt like all of the next games have massive implications. Kansas State at Iowa State. This is week 0. This is a massive game in the Big 12. Kansas State and Iowa State are among the favorites in the Big 12 to win the league. I don't think the league is going to get an at-large, so standings within the conference are of the utmost importance, and the winner of that game will have a game and a half leg up on everyone else in the league, at least at that point. You look at Syracuse and Tennessee. Both teams have to replace a ton off of last year. Syracuse won 10 games. Tennessee made the college football playoff. Now, tons of new faces will be in pivotal places for Syracuse and Tennessee there in that week 1 matchup on August 30th. We'll go to Virginia Tech and South Carolina. South Carolina last year, they were the darlings, right? That was the team that everybody loved, and they thought, hey, if they made the playoffs, South Carolina could be a team that you didn't want to see. Well, now South Carolina has a lot of new faces on the defensive side, but their quarterback's back. Their best defensive player in Dylan Stewart is back. And now they're going against a team in Virginia Tech that was last year's darling. If you look kind of back at last year's preseason prognostications, a lot of people saying, hey, Virginia Tech's a dark horse playoff contender. Well, now they're flying under the radar, and they have their quarterback back. They have coaching continuity. They have some good pieces that they've added in the portal. So maybe they can make life difficult for the team with all the expectations in South Carolina. And then 2 more that I picked out here early in the season that I think have a chance to be very intriguing. Tulane at Ole Miss. This will be early in the season. Ole Miss is still trying to figure out probably some pieces on the defensive side. And Tulane under John Summerall has been a consistent winner every single year. And they played each other just a couple years ago. And Tulane, albeit the final score, was very much in favor of Ole Miss. But if you watch that game from start to finish, it was probably a lot closer than the final score might have indicated. And then finally, SMU and TCU. SMU last year makes the playoff, is in contention to win the ACC all throughout the season. Well, TCU had a down year last year and really struggled to kind of get a whole lot going. Now they have a very potent passing attack. I think they have fine wide receivers. I think they have a solid core back from what they did last year, and I think they have a chance to really ramp things up after being somewhat disappointing the last couple of years. So those are just some under-the-radar games that no one's really talking about, but I think could be pivotal at season's end in determining the outcome or the perception of some of those programs.
All right, next one comes from Andy in South Carolina, and he asks, who are the 2 or 3 group of 5 teams that college football fans should know about that have a chance to make the CFP?
Well, much like the last question, I couldn't limit it to just 2 or 3. We'll start with Boise State. It shouldn't require a ridiculous amount of analysis here. I mean, Boise State is always going to be in the mix. They bring back their quarterback in Maddox Matson. Yeah, you lose Ashton Genty, but there's a lot of key contributors back off last year's team that made the playoff. And right now, if you look at this, the percentages, according to ESPN FPI, they're among the highest in the entire G5. They also have a massive opportunity to go play against Notre Dame. You get that resume boost. Maybe you win the game, maybe you don't, but that's going to be a schedule improver regardless of what the outcome is if Boise State wins the Mountain West. You go to Tulane in the AAC. They've been one of the more successful programs in the league the last few years. Yes, they lose their quarterback. They lose their running back. They lose a couple other difference-making players, but this is a team that I would just never bet against as long as John Summerall is there. I look at Memphis. They have a pretty strong roster when you take into account the transfer portal additions that they were able to bring in. Yes, you lose Seth Hennigan, your quarterback who'd been there, forever. But in comes Brendan Lewis from Nevada, who had a pretty impressive career up to this point. He's got 25 career starts, has been highly productive offensively. So there's reason to believe that things could work out for them. And they get a game against Arkansas at home, which is massive as far as strengthening that schedule. If they can pull off that upset, maybe that would go a long way in strengthening their strength of record and their resume overall. Few others. UNLV is one that I'm going to have an eye on. They were in the mix last year. Dan Mullen is now the head coach. There's a lot of optimism with what they've brought into the quarterback room. Anthony Calandria is one of the guys I'm really interested in. I think he had some really bright moments at Virginia the last couple of years. Now he's with Dan Mullen. I think if he can just eliminate some of the big mistakes, some of the big plays that he's able to make are very, very impressive. James Madison's a team that always needs to be on the short list of teams that could make a run. They've obviously done an amazing job. They also play at Louisville early. So that, I think, is a big opportunity for James Madison to kind of go out and play against a top 25 program in Louisville and potentially make an early statement. UTSA has been rock solid. Navy, I think, is back with Blake Horvath. So there's a handful of teams in the G5 this year that I think could make a run. But at this point, it's far too premature to go out on a limb and guarantee one of those teams making a spot. So it's going to be interesting to follow for sure.
All right, last question for today comes from Jamie in California. He says, the new Pac-12 just signed a media rights contract with CBS and are about to add their 8th football member in Texas State. While it's nice to have the name recognition back in the fold, do you ever see the newer version of the conference being a player in college football?
Well, what I look at with this Pac-12, I guess, rebirth, which I think is the appropriate way of describing what's gone down, is they are a really strong G5 league. I mean, that's what they are. It's not really that dissimilar to the American Athletic Conference in my eyes. I think, has a chance to be kind of the best G5 league when you look at some of the additions that they've made with Boise State, Colorado, Fresno, San Diego State. I mean, these are teams that have won a ton of football games in the last handful of years. The possibility of adding Texas State, I think, also makes things very interesting as far as where they're at from a footprint standpoint. But the media rights deal, I think, is massive. And if you look at the AAC, it's about $10 million per school. If they can get close to that, then that would be significant. And I think all eyes are kind of on it right now. We don't have the details from CBS and the agreement that's been signed, but things could be looking up for this league here down the road. While I'm not willing to go as far as to say just because they're the Pac-12 and they were once the Power 5, they're back in the Power 5. No, I don't see that. But I do think that this could be the destination G5 league every single year when looking at possible playoff contenders. So granted, a lot of potential moving parts. You got to look at the Tulanes, you got to look at the Memphises of the world, but still they've done a tremendous job of rebranding themselves, getting as much quality as they can possibly find with some of those other G5 programs from the Mountain West, and slowly but surely elevating the profile of the league overall. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and I can't wait to see what it looks like when they fully launch in 2027. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Continue to encourage all of you guys to like, to rate, to subscribe to the show, wherever you get the show, on the podcast platform, on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. It's very helpful for us, and we hope that it's helpful for you so that the episodes are automatically in your inbox before you even know that we've released them. So we very much appreciate the support that you've shown the show. The numbers are up year over year by like 1,000,000%, it feels like. So we appreciate the momentum we've created. Let's just keep it going. Let's keep the pedal pressed, and let's get all the way through media days flying high. Let's get through the summer months flying high, and then we can hit the season as hard as humanly possible this year. It's going to be a tremendous year in college football here in 2025. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have a tremendous day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.